what you should really try to do is fall in love with the problem space. Fall in love with the issue that people have and not fall in love with your solution, because your solution might be wrong. You might end up going in the wrong direction. And if you fall in love with your specific solution, it's going to result in you not wanting to change, not wanting to adapt. Your aspirations will die.
Hi everyone, you're listening to Scaling DevTools. I'm joined today by Michael from WorkOS. And before I introduce Michael, we also have an announcement that we have our first ever sponsor, and it is Michael and it is WorkOS. And it's a big moment for me. It's like 60 odd episodes, and Michael reached out and asked if he could sponsor the podcast. So here we are. Thank you so much, Michael.
Jack, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be invited as a guest to speak on this, but I had been listening to your podcast for a while and love this type of content. So I'm just delighted that we're able to support you and have you keep making stuff like this.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much. And would you like to tell us a bit about WorkOS?
Yeah, sure. So WorkOS is a developer platform. So we focus on developers building apps, and we help them add enterprise features to those apps. So imagine that you build, the next great SaaS tool, the next Dropbox or Notion or Slack or what have you. If you want to go sell that to a big company, they're going to ask for features like SAML login, single sign-on, or sophisticated things around user management or provisioning or security, kind of everything around the authentication and identity and user management stuff. We build all of that as a service. So some people have called WorkOS Stripe for enterprise features. It's really easy to plug in. The company's about 5 years old, been doing it for a while. We have hundreds of customers. People listening to this podcast, you've probably used an app plugged into WorkOS. Some of our customers include Vercel and Netlify, PlanetScale, Webflow, Carta, Plaid, Brex, a lot of big names, and then a lot of small companies like startups that are just starting to go up market, just starting to close their first few enterprise customers. So it's a really exciting thing to be able to serve both, those big companies, but also ones that are starting to grow, help the next generation of founders expand their business.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's something that we're going to dig into in this episode of what it's like to actually work with enterprises. But I can just share a recent fact that the startup that I've been contracting with, they recently went through a big compliance situation, or a customer that required compliance stuff. And it took so much time from the core team. And I know that they used Vanta, and that was a massive accelerator for their compliance. And that's kind of how I'm seeing WorkOS, is that it's a bit like Vanta in that it's they're helping you with one aspect of it, and you're helping with the kind of all the SAML sign-in and stuff that would be an absolute nightmare without something like that.
Yeah, we have a lot of customers that start using WorkOS around the same time they start looking for something like Vanta, for the compliance pieces. WorkOS provides all that functionality in your app, which the enterprise customers are going to ask for. All those product features where, developers don't necessarily want to build it. If you can get it out of the box, get back to building unique stuff, that's a big win for you.
Yeah, 100%. So if I've got a startup and there's, two of us, we've maybe got a little bit of funding, $1 million or something. And somehow, some way we have started to have conversations with an enterprise customer. Let's say, what is an enterprise customer? That's probably the first question.
That's a good question. Yeah. I mean, enterprise means a lot of different things to a lot of people. Let's zoom back. Yeah. So imagine that you're two folks starting to build some new app. Maybe you're working in a coffee shop or in your dorm room. Maybe you're like Drew and Arash, who started Dropbox, and you're building this tool. You throw it out there, you demo it on Hacker News, you get a bunch of users, and you start finding that product market fit, right? People start using it. They start actually bringing it to work, maybe using it for, workplace stuff. Maybe they even start paying for it. You get individuals to start paying, or small teams. At some point, you're going to have a larger organization that wants to use this. You're going to want to have, maybe your buddy who works at Coinbase says, "Hey, I really want to use your app across our whole team." And in that type of environment, the features that you've built maybe for people signing in aren't necessarily sufficient. For a company like that, they'd say, "Hey, we can't have you signing in with a custom password. It has to tie into our identity system." Or we need the groups and the permissions to come from our system. We want to be able to control it and sync it in. And that list of features starts piling up. Then there's stuff around data retention or process, on your back end, or, there's a really long list of this stuff. And that gap of product features ends up slowing down people when they're growing. In that moment when you have product market fit, it actually stops you from closing deals. And I've talked about this so much because this is kind of the thesis around WorkOS. We call this the enterprise chasm, that step in between when you've got product market fit and when you've actually been able to capture the revenue, the deals, the enterprise customers. And the worst thing that can happen is if you don't cross that enterprise chasm, you might lose those customers to a bigger company. Microsoft might come in and take all of your users, or clone your feature or something like that. And so what we built is WorkOS kind of bridges these two things. It allows you to really quickly to add these features to your app, because we essentially it comes pre-built. We've done all the integration work. We've built all the components. And the core insight, is if you're building Dropbox, the auth components that you would build for enterprise stuff, it's exactly the same code that you would write if you were building Slack, if you were building Notion, if you were building the next finance tool or legal tool or tool for schools or hospitals. It's the same stuff. It's just this kind of integration layer. And so WorkOS provides that all to you. It's really easy to plug in. We've taken a tremendous amount of inspiration from platforms like Stripe, very developer focused, great SDKs and all that. And then right out of the gate, you're able to go back to those deals and say, yeah, we can actually support you. We'd love to have you as a customer. So everyone wins. Like WorkOS, people think about us as APIs and developer tools. We're really in the business actually of helping startups grow and expand, helping companies succeed faster as they expand, and helping developers not need to, read the RFC spec on what SAML means. Allow them to actually just get back to building unique product features and cross that chasm.
Is there other stuff as well? What if you've got WorkOS and you've got do you need other stuff? Typically, is there a whole range of things you have to do as well?
Well, we already mentioned Vanta, which specifically Vanta helps people get SOC 2 compliance. And SOC 2 isn't really a feature in your app. It's actually more about the way your company operates. How do you release code? If there's a security issue, what happens? How do you train people? Do you do background checks? It's all this stuff around kind of your corporate policy, but it's not a feature in your app. So that's really important. We don't do that at WorkOS. There's a few different vendors that are options. Vance is one of them. As people are going up market, you have to look at changing your pricing. Bigger customers are willing to pay more. And so there's this kind of delineation between your product features, what goes in the enterprise version versus what goes in maybe the pro version or the business version. That's a big distinction you need to make. And we don't have a product for that. You got to figure that out by yourself. You'll also find that bigger organizations, bigger deal potential, they'll say, hey, we don't want to just put in a credit card and sign up and use it. We want to talk to somebody. Hey, we're going to spend $100,000 a year on this thing. We just have to have somebody to talk to. We want to understand how this is going to work, what kind of support we're going to get. And it turns out the people that talk to customers are called sales. So you end up needing to hire salespeople too. Most developers, think, I could maybe go forever without hiring sales. They've had bad experiences maybe talking to salespeople. I know I've been one of those people. But as you find, as you grow up market, you actually need to have a group of people who can talk to sales when they want, when they want that type of experience, or they need that for their product. Sometimes they need a custom contract. Talk to sales, figure out what are the details you have to write down for them to be able to use the product. And that just might be the way that they buy software, as a big company. There's a whole bunch of stuff you need to change. But when it comes to the product features, a lot of them are around kind of user management and login and integrating with their IT systems. That's where WorkOS helps out. That's kind of the meat and potatoes of what we do.
Yeah. You actually mentioned it's $100,000 a year. All of this stuff, hiring salespeople, maybe you have to have lawyers and stuff as well. In terms of financials around how much should you minimum be looking for to deal with such a big organization? And then also how much does this stuff cost?
Yeah, that's a great question. It really depends on your business. There are, I'll just tell you at WorkOS, we have customers paying us over $100,000 a year, much more, who are just on a credit card month to month. It's just charging their card. It's a big credit card charge every month, but they're happy with that just self-serve experience. It's just a high volume usage. Now we have other customers at that scale that are like, no, we want this on a contract. We want an annual contract in terms of our agreement with you. We have small customers, of course, that are on a credit card, pay as you go every month. We also have companies that are smaller that say, hey, we have to sign a contract. Even if this is only, $20,000 a year, $15,000 a year, we have to have it on a contract. So you really need to be flexible to your customer base. But there's some general rules of thumb. I think it comes back to actually having a sales team, how salespeople get paid. Salespeople, if you haven't managed a sales team or aren't deep into it, I know this is a DevTools podcast. We're talking about sales teams. Slight digression. Salespeople are paid based on performance. They close deals, they get paid. It's actually this kind of beautiful thing. It's like input output. It's a very much like a system. Kind of love it as an engineer. Oftentimes, salespeople, half of what they get paid is based on their earnings, their target earnings. And so you actually can build this system around how many leads you need, how many opportunities are actually real potential deals, how much they get closed, how often they get closed, and then what the average deal size is. And that total amount that salesperson kind of has closed in revenue actually maps to their take-home pay, and it's commonly kind of around like 18 to 22% of the first year contract kind of goes to the salesperson, which seems like a lot, but it's also they're the one closing the deal. So you need to have contracts that are big enough to support that relative to the, compensation of the salesperson. It's pretty hard to have a sales team with contracts less than about 20 or 30K annually. So usually it's like a couple $1,000s a month, that kind of contract. You can build a sales team around it. Usually smaller than that, you can't afford to pay salespeople to do it. Or it just has to be really, really fast to close. The salesperson is spending very little time on it. They're essentially just getting the person to sign a piece of paper, and that's it. But where it really starts working, and when you can hire really amazing salespeople, really good folks, it's kind of, I think, when your contracts are $50,000, $60,000 and beyond. That's when you get really strategic selling, and the salesperson's trying to understand the business of the customer to really map the product in the right way. People that are good at that, watching them work, it's kind of like magic. It's like it's pretty incredible.
Yeah, how you mentioned the magic. Like, what is the magic part?
Well, sales. Here's a great question. So, sales, most people think about it as a value extraction. I want to use this thing, and I have to talk to a salesperson, and they're going to squeeze me for all I'm worth. They're going to squeeze me till my eyes bleed, and try to get as many dollars out as possible. Those salespeople exist. They are out there for sure. And it might even be the majority. I don't know. Salespeople are incentivized by how much revenue they're closing. And so it is their incentive to push up the deal size. But I found that really, really, really good salespeople, they seek to understand. If you watch an expert at sales in a call, you would think that they're going to spend 90% of the time talking about the product, telling you all the features. Here's what it does. Here's how awesome it is. Here's why you should pay for it. Here's why it's so incredible. The opposite is true, though. They will spend 90% of the time asking questions. Tell me about your business. Tell me about what you're trying to achieve this year. Tell me about the biggest problems you have as an organization right now. What have you tried? What have you not tried? And then, once they understand, hey, here's what your challenge is, here's what's in front of you, maybe then they'll talk about the product. But they might even say even before that, like, how valuable would it be for you to solve that problem? The one you just described, the biggest problem you have this year. How much would that be worth to you as a company? Probably a lot, right? It's the biggest problem you're trying to solve. And so they map actually the product specifically around what you're trying to achieve as a company. And when you do sales in that way, no longer is it like value extraction. It's problem solving. It's just like going as an engineer and saying, how do I help this team solve this problem or re-architect this or debug it? You seek to understand what they're trying to achieve as a business and kind of wrap your whole solution in that way. Because oftentimes a product could be used for a zillion different things. There's a lot, everyone's life is different. Everyone's job is different. Every company is different at what they're trying to achieve. And you build one product that can go everywhere, right? But you can't sell it until you understand what they're trying to achieve. If you're selling water, you need to understand if the person is thirsty because they're going hiking. Are they trying to wash their dishes? Is it going in the radiator of their car? Are they taking a shower? Like, it's just water. It could be used for a zillion different things. And only when you totally understand like what they're trying to get done with their business can you approach it. So I found really, really amazing salespeople are extraordinarily empathetic. They're really curious. They seek to understand and learn. It's fun to talk to them. You feel like they're interested in you. And only at the end, do they map the product to it. And ideally, they've kind of built up the trust. Really good salespeople will also tell you if it's not a fit. At the end of that call, they'll be like, I don't think we're actually the right ones to solve this for you. You guys, I don't want to sell you the thing that's not going to be a slam dunk for you guys.
Yeah.
And when that's done really well, it's like breathing air. You don't feel it. It's almost like a supernatural feeling to witness it and be on the other side of it as well. So unfortunately, there's a lot of bad salespeople in the world. There's a lot of people that are very transactional, value extractive. You can still make money if you're a bad salesperson, it turns out. And by bad here, I mean not doing that, that kind of discovery. But the people that are really good are really, really good. It's something special to behold.
Yeah, it makes total sense. Just like, I kind of imagine that, like, if you go into like a bike shop and like, it's like the person helping you, they're not going to just start selling a bike like immediately, and like they'll actually just help you.
It'd be like, what do you want to do with this? Why are you here? What brings you here in the first place? You want to go ride bikes with your son? Is that it? Do you have a buddy that mountain bikes and you want to go shred some trails? Do you want to go road biking? Do you want to get in shape? Or do you want to just go ride along the beach? You're, totally different, right? If you start talking about the size of the wheels and how many spokes it has, like you've already lost. You've already lost. So it has to start with curiosity. It has to start with questions and genuinely want to help that person succeed, not to extract the value, but together create the value.
If like, let's say, we used WorkOS and we got our first customer, and now we're looking to actually we're like, okay, well, we're a good fit for enterprise. I want enterprise clients. I want to like hire a salesperson and start doing that thing. What kind of advice would you give that person?
Well, yeah, great question. So we don't help you get product market fit. I think that's an important thing to say. Getting product market fit's really tough. It's sort of like trying to catch lightning in a jar. You got to capture the zeitgeist, and if there was a simple process for doing it or something repeatable, everybody would do it. But it's not. It's different every time. And that's the first thing you need to figure out as an entrepreneur. Can you make, like a Y Combinator says, can you make something people want? Can you make something that people are, find valuable and they're willing to pay for, willing to use. However, like once you get that, even the initial versions of it, usually you want to scale it. You want to get a bigger organization to do it. And so we first talk to companies usually, sometimes it's earlier on. We have some free stuff people can use. And we actually have an amazing free auth system that you can use on day one. Like kind of gives you the login box and everything up to 1 million users for free. So it's like really good, for free. So you can use that immediately on day one. But usually when people start paying for WorkOS, when they actually start using our commercial side, is when they have their first few enterprise customers kind of knocking at the door. And when I say enterprise, what we were saying earlier, it could be your friend's company that's just a little bit larger. And they're like, hey, we want to actually use this on a bigger team. Just the kind of first nibbles of enterprise. And WorkOS allows you to have just a stronger position, going after those companies saying, hey, yeah, we are enterprise ready. We're ready for your business. We might be, 4 folks in a coffee shop, but we have all the battle-tested enterprise features you're going to need. And for every company, that's different. Sometimes that's within the first month of building your app. Sometimes it takes a couple of years to get there. It's really dependent on when you launch and how you get customers. And we work with people at all different shapes and sizes.
That makes sense. And in terms of like actually getting these enterprises, like, is it a case of like, okay, go to the salesperson store, acquire yourself a good salesperson, bring them into the company, and then like
right. go to the salesperson store. Yeah. Like,
you can start spending your millions.
Yeah. Well, I don't think so. So I think that sales, I was saying earlier, seek to understand, ask questions, be curious about the business. That's what the founders of the company do. When you're trying to find product market fit, when you get on calls with customers, you are doing sales. Any founder that says they can't do sales is wrong. They've been doing sales since the beginning, since day one. You're selling when you hire people to join the team. You're selling when you raise money. You're selling when you go to a house party and you have to convince someone else that you have a real job. You're like, oh no, this is a real thing. You are doing sales. Whether you think sales is good or not, sorry, you're a salesperson. If you hate salespeople, you've become that which you hate.
Self-hating.
But no, you do that by yourself first. And I think when the right time is to hire sales is for like kind of two different reasons. One is you want to scale it out. You have figured something out and you want more people to do it. You don't have enough time during the day. You don't have enough meetings. You're like, gosh, my calendar's full. I wish we had more people to talk to sales. And every one of these conversations is pretty similar. I'm just doing the same thing again and again and again and again. You also might hire a sales leader when you want to expand it even more. You want to bring someone in that's managed salespeople, that has kind of strategically, expanded, understands different motions, and just can, kind of do it in a smoother way than you figuring it out. But you definitely don't want to hire those people before you figured it out yourself. It's pretty much impossible to hire. I've never seen it happen really. Actually, go hiring in sales talent to figure out how to initially sell the product. That kind of has to come from the founder, and the founder's relationship with the early customers. That's where it's derived. And it's really hard. Most people want to go hire someone else to do it because they're like, oh, this is exhausting. I'm kind of slogging through it. But I promise you figure it out. It gets better later. But that's a core responsibility and a need that you can't really hand off to anybody else. It is discovering the market, discovering how to sell the product is the step towards product market fit. That is the responsibility of the founder. And you wouldn't say like, can we just hire someone else to go get us product market fit? Like that wouldn't make any sense, right? Of course, that's your responsibility. Early sales fits within that too. So don't go to the salesperson store and pull a few off the rack, to put in place. But once you get moving, once you have customers coming in, you're like, hey, I need some more firepower. Definitely, that's a good time.
What was it like that stage when you were like finding product market fit or like getting your first doing the sales or yourself?
So developer tools are kind of weird in that it often takes a long time for customers to mature. You might talk to somebody that's building an app and they're like, oh yeah, this sounds great, but I don't need it yet. I'm going to need it in a while. You just have to wait. And then they might plug it in and they might start using it. And they're like, okay, I've started using it, but I don't need that much of this, just a little bit. You have to wait for them to grow and mature. So, for the first 2 or 3 years of the company, our revenue was like quite minimal. It's grown steadily, but it's slow to start. And this is really common with a lot of developer products and SaaS products. You can see a slow, not everything is ChatGPT, like out of the gate. And so I think what you want to do is just connect with those developers, understand their needs, build for the ones that are willing to use it early on and get their feedback, and just be like really patient. This probably means raising more money than you would expect. So you have a longer time horizon. You can be more patient in that way. I think the last thing you want to do is to try to over optimize the amount of revenue you're getting early on. Early on, when you're selling and when you're building product, you're selling to learn. You're selling to learn about the value and how customers think about it and care about it. You might change your pricing. You might change your package, kind of your pricing structures, different features and different plans. And you want to be able to be flexible and all that stuff. So it takes a while. For me, I live in San Francisco. There's a bunch of startup founders around here. You can't throw a stone without hitting another founder. And I'd met a bunch of those folks. So I went and talked to all my friends building apps and the next generation entrepreneurs. I went to events where other SaaS founders were hanging out. I went to conferences and would constantly talk about WorkOS. My friends are probably sick of hearing me talk about this company.
Your friends are all enterprise ready.
Yeah, exactly. It's like when you're ready for this, let us help you. We're ready to go. And even people that came inbound, I've become friends with them too. Vercel is a customer of ours. I'm friends with Guillermo. Or Loom is a customer. We power all of Loom's enterprise features. Those three guys, and especially Vinay. He was CTO, really brought us in, gave us a lot of amazing feedback. We learned a lot from them too. So I think it's kind of a long game. It's again, like there's no, I don't know, it's kind of hate to say it. There's no like pithy, quick way to do a lot of this stuff. You just have to be patient and really believe in what you're trying to achieve. Yeah,
that's actually a really good segue, Michael, because like something that we were talking about before the call was that I watched it's a great talk, by the way, your talk on crossing the enterprise chasm that you gave 5 years ago. And I think you were like fairly early on at that point. relatively.
Yeah, we hadn't launched.
Very early on.
Company was maybe like 3 or 4 months old. We just raised a little bit of money. I actually gave that talk at GitHub's office at this kind of startup event. And it's coming up on 5 years. And it was kind of just the idea for the company. It's like, here's why I care about this. Here's why I'm doing this. And honestly, the presentation was made literally the night before, and I was kind of scrambling to put it together. If you watch it today, it's remarkably consistent with what we're doing right now. It's almost eerie how similar it is. And I think to a large degree, I kind of just got lucky. I kind of knew what we were shooting after, and it's pretty rare that happens, that you're like kind of right on the money initially. But I think it's because we centered around the problem. It's not just about authentication or user management. It's not just about directory sync or skim or audit logging or access control or all these other things that we do. It's about going up market, becoming enterprise ready. I heard this thing a long time ago. I'm not sure who said it, but it stuck with me, that when you're thinking about a company to build, a problem that you want to dig into, what you should really try to do is fall in love with the problem space, fall in love with the issue that people have, and not fall in love with your solution, because your solution might be wrong. You might end up going in the wrong direction. And if you fall in love with your specific solution, the feature you've built, or exactly the app you've built, it's going to result in you not wanting to change, not wanting to adapt. And you'll probably, your aspirations will die because you won't be able to change. You should be flexible on your solution, but laser focused on the problem, and always hold the same problem. I see a lot of entrepreneurs kind of doing the opposite thing, where they like build some shiny technology or some capability, and then you go search for problems. Like, oh, will it solve this? Will it solve this? Will it solve this? I guess sometimes that works. I don't know. I haven't seen it work that often. I think it's much more durable if you think about the problem space and just obsess over the problem. And for us, for WorkOS, that's really this enterprise chasm stuff. That talk I gave, you can see it on YouTube, Crossing the Enterprise Chasm. I actually turned it into a podcast. I have a podcast where I've interviewed a bunch of, CEOs that have gone up market, of companies like Cloudflare, Stripe and stuff like that. Just because I've become obsessed with this transition that companies make. And we build technology to help make that transition, but it's a bigger problem than just what we solve.
It feels very, because I was, preparing for the podcast and watching that and thinking about it. And I did feel very kind of like out of my depth. And there were so many things that I didn't know. And it was like, oh my, wow. If somehow I get to that point, it's going to be tricky. Like I feel like I'm starting to kind of understand a little bit, at least like the early stages, like a vague idea of how the different parts work. Whether or not I can pull it off is another one. But like once it gets to that point, it just feels like the difficulty gets so much, because like probably no one person understands any of these things anyway. It's like it starts to become so complex. People specialize, and
yeah, I don't understand all that. I wouldn't claim to that. It is really complex. I found with this type of problem, like the deeper and deeper you go, it actually gets more complicated. It's like a fractal. You zoom in and it gets more and more complicated as you get closer and closer. And that's why it's interesting. Sometimes people ask me, like, why would you even work on this thing? It's enterprise APIs, SaaS, it's kind of these dry pieces, but it turns out it's a really deep, complex thing to solve. And if you do it right, it has a huge impact for folks. So I've had the same kind of conversations with friends of mine that work at Stripe. This thing seems so complex and kind of dry, and would you do it? And it turns out if you start building it as a platform, not just doing it as a one-off, but really thinking about how to solve it in totality, like solve the whole category as a platform, that becomes really fun, because you start being able to think in new ways about how to approach it and go deeper and be more rigorous than any company has ever done before. We have this like a kind of narrow problem we're solving for companies. We can go so deep, we hit bedrock. We can go deeper than anybody else has ever gone before, and do it sustainably, make money, grow, continue to work on it. And that's, I don't know. I love solving problems. I think the thing I love about engineering is just completely solving a problem, completely doing it. And there's such opportunity to do that. And that's the space. There's so much depth to it. It's really compelling, really satisfying.
Yeah. Yeah, it totally makes sense. It's such a big, difficult problem that it's like one of those problems that can never really be fully solved. You could always do it better. And it's like, just sink your teeth in it for your whole life and just make a dent. And yeah.
Yeah. The market keeps evolving and changing. You know, we plug into IT systems and gosh, who like, what hasn't changed in IT over the last 3 or 4 years? You know, COVID, even this mass transformation to remote work changed the way so many companies operate, what tools they use and how they collaborate. I mean, there's a huge upheaval in what IT systems people use at work. That, you know, that changed stuff for us too. You know, in terms of how we support our customers, our product. So yeah, it turns out you can kind of become a geek about anything and go deep. And then, the approach that we've taken to that is the other piece of it. You know, in this DevTools podcast, is preaching to the choir. I love building things for developers. I kind of fell into it accidentally. My first company built this email API, and I just found that like when you build infrastructure and tools for other developers, other makers, other engineers, it's sort of the pinnacle of engineering. They're like the most discerning customer. They care about the tiniest, smallest things. You know that, but if you can do it right, if you can do it really well, they're so loyal. They ruthlessly love what you've built, and they'll defend it. You know, they'll be close to you, and it's just this. I don't know. Developers are some people really hate it. They don't understand, especially people that are non-engineers. Are like, I don't get developers. I don't know how to market to them. But I'm like, yeah, if you can get in, you know, kind of do the right thing for them, become one of them. If you are one of them, it's such a cool audience to build and sell for. I think it's the best.
I was like, I've kind of talked about this on the podcast, but like I've done a few different things, and like I worked as a salesperson for like a couple of years.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And then so I was actually working at Stack Overflow, and I'd done programming before that. And one of the things was like I went to like a developer meetup, and I was like, oh my God, it's just so amazing, like the way that everyone is like helping each other. And I'd just come from like the sales environment where the person next to me, like her life goal was to just like get one more dollar that month than me, basically. And like it was like just amazing. And I think that was one of the reasons why like I quit and went back to development. And I just think, the developers are awesome. And then DevTools are like developer squared, where they're like...
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. Yeah, I tweeted this thing the other day about how, you know, when you're starting to think about building a company and you're building a startup, you should be really specific about what type of customers you want. Because if you're the founder of a company, one of the co-founders, you know, you're going to spend a tremendous amount of time talking to your customers. If you want to succeed, you have to talk to customers every day for a ton of time, every day for years. You know, I talk to customers every single day. If you don't like your customers, it's going to drive you nuts because you're talking to them constantly. But if you love your customers, if it's a group of people that you're like, I just want to spend time around these people, it's the best job in the world. You know, and that can be different thing for different people. You know, if you really love hanging out with doctors, you should build stuff for doctors. Yeah, if you're building software, build software for doctors. If you grew up on a farm and you love agriculture and you just kind of love hanging out with farmers and you're like a, you know, software developer and engineer, you should go build tech for farmers. They love that kind of stuff. Like it's a huge thing you could help them with because every day you'll be spending with that customer base. And I think, me having the opportunity to build for developers and spend time with other engineers and other people building companies, other entrepreneurs, it's such a cool thing. I mean, it's such a good perk of the job. It's really, it's not just me. It's like everyone, our engineers talk to our customers too. It's one of the pretty cool things about building for building a dev tool.
I completely agree. I feel like there's at least two like huge points around like falling in love with the problem, falling in love with the people who you're solving the problem for. Would those be the takeaways? Yeah.
And that's kind of sales, you know, going back to the first thing we were saying, like if you can do those two things, you're halfway to doing sales.
Michael, I think we're coming to the end, but if you had any kind of like takeaways other than those for anyone who's a DevTool founder or works at early stage DevTool, what advice would you give?
Yeah. Gosh, there's so much stuff. I mean, startups are so hard. I think everyone kind of hears that and knows that, and people blog and tweet about it, but you really don't get it until you start. You really don't. You don't totally feel it, And there's, I think it was the NVIDIA CEO said in an interview a few months ago, like, if you would have known how hard it was going to be, would you have started it? And he was like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And look how successful he is. People would kill to be him.
Yeah.
So it's really hard. It's really, really hard. And if you can cultivate a mindset, it's really tough. If you can cultivate a mindset though, where you celebrate that or embrace it, embracing the struggle of it, not avoiding it, not feeling like you're the victim when it happens, when things are tough, not shying away from it. But when things get really hard, you're like, this is it. I'm in it. This is what I signed up for. And this is where the value is being created. It kind of changes your ability to operate and your perspective. And I think just most people don't anticipate how hard it's going to be. And so they assume it should be easier. They assume I should be able to hire someone to go fix this, or I shouldn't have this problem, or gosh, it just shouldn't be this hard. And for anyone listening that's thinking about starting a company or is starting a company and you feel this, it's supposed to be that hard. That's why not everyone does it. No one goes and climbs a super big mountain and halfway up they're like out of breath and like, I thought it was going to be easy, or like it should be easy to take every step of the way. I'm angry at the mountain because this is harder than I thought it was going to be. No, it's just hard. It's just hard. That's what it is. And that struggle, I think when you find groups of people who are company builders, founders, co-founders that hang out, it's one of the things that unifies them no matter what you're building across no matter what domain. That shared struggle is part of the entrepreneurial journey. And so I'd say just anyone to doing that, just like, don't give up. Like realize that's really tough and just kind of keep plowing through it. And it's saying that doesn't make it easier, but I think it's probably just important to hear that like, you're not alone in that being hard. And that is the job. It's not the thing to avoid. It quintessentially is what the job is. And on the other side of that, like through struggle is the reward, is the success. Every single success has come through struggle. It's a requirement for the job. Lean into it, take it on as a challenge and responsibility. And, and if you get lucky, because success is not guaranteed, but if you also get lucky, you might have the chance to build something really great.
Amazing. That was, yeah, I love it. I'm like ready to march and never give up.
And use WorkOS when you do it.
And use WorkOS.
And use WorkOS, of course. Yeah, use it in triple.
Yes,
yeah.
Use WorkOS to become enterprise ready.
Exactly.
Michael, thank you so much. Thank you for coming. Thanks for sharing amazing stuff. Thank you for sponsoring the podcast. Thank you for being our first sponsor. Thank you to WorkOS. And where can people learn more about you and about WorkOS?
Yeah. Well, it's been an absolute delight. This is really fun. I could talk about this for hours. Just go to workos.com. You can Google it. I'm on Twitter. I love talking to founders, other developers about this kind of stuff. And you can even email me. I'm just michael@workos.com. I love hearing from folks. So feel free to, if anything on this podcast kind of resonate with you, feel free to reach out. I'd love to chat with you.
Amazing. And then I recommend people go watch that Crossing the Enterprise Chasm. If you just search. Yeah.
That's on YouTube. And also, which I mentioned, I do have this other podcast. It's like talking about a podcast on a podcast, all with other company founders and CEOs, people who have gone through this transition, people who are later stage, who have, become public companies or raised hundreds of millions of dollars, all about this transition of going up market. And I've interviewed a lot of quite technical founders of companies, So if that's interesting to you, definitely go check that out. It's everywhere. It's on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and all those places.
Amazing. Well, thank you again, Michael. And thank you everyone for listening.